Welcome, everybody, to Survive and Advance on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I'm your host for Survive and Advance, co-host Mike Goodpaster. And right now I'd like to welcome in my other co-host, 1981 national champion, Steve Risley. How you doing, Steve?
Doing good. Just wanted to say a couple words real quickly. We lost one of our teammates this past week, Steve Bushy, who was a Mr. Basketball in Indiana in 1979, was a member of our team in 1981. Very quiet young man, good guy, great representative of the program. And unfortunately, he passed away at a far earlier age than he should have. He still had a lot to give to the basketball community and his family in Indiana. So, Steve, sorry to hear about it to Steve's family, and God bless and Godspeed.
All right, definitely a great player who's on your 81 team. And I think, what year was he graduated? 83?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He played a couple more years with Kitchell and Whitman and Chuck Franz. And they had some good teams. They won another Big Ten. They won another Big Ten in 1982. So they won 3 Big Tens, and our team only won 2. So,
yeah. But you won a national championship, but then again, so did they, Steve. So they're one up on you.
There you go.
All right. And of course, not as always, but last week he missed a show and our numbers were up dramatically. So Steve said, hey, let's bring him back again and see if it was because he wasn't on last week. Sam Teets, how you doing, Sam?
I'm doing great, Mike. How about you?
All right. I'm doing better than Daniel Snyder right now, who seems to be in a little bit of hot water. And we're not talking about his Redskins name, which he's agreed to change. Of course, Steve, Daniel Snyder, it seems there's been a lot of things going on in the Washington Redskins organization. None of them have to do with winning or how you become a winner. With Daniel Snyder, what should be done about Snyder? Should he be kicked out of the NFL?
No. None of the facts are directly attributed to his actions. Now, the buck stops somewhere, and being owner of the team, the buck's going to stop there. If there is a culture in that community of Redskins, the Redskins organization, then he's ultimately accountable for it. But I don't know that it's an offense that would say, let's take his team away from him. I
think the team could be taken from him. I don't think he belongs in the NFL, and I think Roger Goodell for not doing anything for the last few years.
For what reason does he not belong in the NFL? For being a stupid owner?
Okay, you want the reasons? The reasons would be this. Number one, he knows nothing about the NFL. He's there because he's got a lot of money. Number two, there was a 2018 complaint against the team's radio announcer who was caught on tape objectifying the college intern. Alex Santos, who was the director of pro personnel, was accused, and looks like rightfully so, of groping her and making unwanted, inappropriate sexual comments. There's over 15 things here. In the NFL, and Daniel Snyder knew about these at least by 2018, Steve.
So if the NFL knew about it, do we kick the NFL out of the league too? I mean, what are we picking on Daniel Snyder for?
We're going to get there. I'm going to get to Daniel Snyder because it's Daniel
Snyder's
Snyder's
fault. This is? This is a sour grapes thing, and I read about this because the Redskins basically haven't won anything in about 20 years. They made their run with Kilmer and Jurgensen and John Riggins, and they had great, and they had the coach that's running in NASCAR now, Joe Gibbs. Yeah, and they had a run, and now all of a sudden the team's not performing. And I get contradictory terms in the sense that the guy this ESPN reporter that wrote the article that I read, and is saying that nobody's buying Redskin jerseys anymore, nobody's buying paraphernalia. Yet I hear that the Redskins are the second or third highest selling merchandising team in the NFL. I mean, the way you describe Daniel Snyder, to me, he sounds like about 30 of the other 32 owners in the NFL. Most of them don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, that's why the NFL allows it to go on.
So what do we do? What do we do? Put you in charge? Wait, you interrupted me. Do we put you in charge of the NFL?
It's not an interruption because you asked me a question. And the question was, why is it Daniel Snyder's fault? How about this? We've got a team that has over 220 or so employees that work full-time. They have one guy in the human relations department, human resources, one person. Now, the only thing I see here is this. I see that these women were told, and this has been proven, when they wouldn't do what they were told, there's another 1,000 people that would do the job that you would do. So I have a real problem with the fact that you're all right with objectifying women. The NFL's all right with objectifying women. I can tell you this. If it's my wife and there's a guy standing under the thing looking up her skirt and he tells her she's got to get over it, I'll break his damn nose. Now, you may think it's all right. I think that what we have here is something. It's the good old boy network. It's rich white assholes that run these teams. And also rich women. There's a couple women owners, and all these people are allowed to do whatever the hell they want because they've got money. And what they've done here is, and the NFL is just as compliant, because the NFL, until recently, when they mandated women's coaching, which I think is also stupid, let's look at it. They objectify women by putting cheerleaders on the sideline, not paying them, and it's absolutely atrocious. I don't even think the NFL should have cheerleaders. They serve no purpose whatsoever.
Sam, save this show now because I'm about to go after Goodpaster like there's no.
Go after Goodpaster.
I never said that I was objectifying the women. I
never said you were. I said
your original question was, is this a terminal offense? I say no, it's not a terminal offense.
Okay, so when
he didn't directly do anything. Other than
he's stupid
running an organization.
He's in charge. This is the thing. If you've got to change the culture of your organization that you've run for 20 years, you have obviously failed as an owner. You have failed miserably as a person because the only person that sets the culture is the man in charge. Am I right here, Sam, or not?
Let me put it this way. He has responded just about as poorly to this incident as you could respond to an incident like this. And if it was just a completely blank slate, if it wasn't Dan Snyder, I probably would say, you know what? They've been instances of this in the past where teams let guys go. Like even in the NBA, Mark Cuban got away with it. What was it, 2 years ago? And he didn't have to sell the team or anything like that. So there's an instance of someone getting away with it. Now, do I think someone should get away with it? I don't think they probably should. Will he probably get away with it? I think he absolutely will get away with it. Should he? Probably not. Because I agree with you, Mike. If that was my girlfriend, if that was even like my younger sister or something like that, I would lose my shit hearing about this. Like, honestly, you wouldn't be okay with that. So,
Sam, watch your language. Steve Risley does not like bad words during the shows.
So, sorry, guys. Sorry. I didn't think I'd be the first one to curse in this show, actually. But no, I would.
Neither did I.
But no, I think it's – I don't think it will be a terminal offense. But I do agree with you on Mike. I do think Dan Snyder at this point – I mean, you got all the minority owners on the team saying they're selling. They're getting the things – they're getting banks looking at their investments in the team to prepare to sell them. They got owners. The other owners in the team are selling their parts of the franchise. And this is a team in a league that prints money for owners, regardless of how small your shares. And they're getting rid of their shares in the team. And to me, that just speaks to a larger fact that this is – Dan Snyder is not a good owner. I have no faith in him as a person right now. And even if you read the statement from owner Dan Snyder, which he posted a couple days ago, at no point in the statement does he acknowledge the victims of this incident, and no point does he acknowledge that this even happened. He doesn't state any names that people committed these acts against the woman. He doesn't say – he doesn't even admit anything that happened. He doesn't even reference any things that happened. He just said, oh, I'm sorry about our culture. I'll make sure it's better. I think Dan Snyder has not owned what has happened in his organization. I think Dan Snyder needs to come forward and say, I personally overlooked some instances of what happened here, and I should have done a better job as an owner. I don't think he will lose his team, but I'm certainly not forgiving Dan Snyder for this.
All right, Sam. So why does he have to explain all that to you? Maybe he's doing all that internally and just decided, I've said from day one, the best thing somebody could do would be to grab Trump, duct tape him to a wall in the basement of the White House and say, just sit here until the elections are over and you'll run away with it. But every time you open your mouth, you say something stupid. Maybe somebody got to Dan Snyder and said, just shut up and don't say anything. And let's fix this problem. But yet you know for a fact that all this is happening, that he's an idiot. We don't know. I've never met Dan Snyder, and I've met a lot of people. And I don't know what he's thinking. he may be trying to clean his house. We don't know that for a fact, that he's not. Maybe he just said, with the crap with the team name going on and all this, there's enough heat being dumped on this organization. Now this rears its ugly head. I didn't do it, but my reports did do it. So now I'm accountable for those people, so I've got to clean it internally. And Mike?
All right, but how about this?
Is that an option, Mike? Is that an option?
No, it's not, because this is 2018 when it happened, the first case.
And maybe
you had the radio voice.
Maybe he comes back,
the radio
all cleaned up, and everything's done being a mess. He says, "Here's what we did. We did it."
Well, how about this? I believe this. I believe when you do something years after, something that is that miserable as sexually harassing somebody, and you don't do anything about it, you don't deserve that team.
We don't know that he's not doing something about it.
No, he's not doing something about it, because it should have been done immediately when it happened.
Where'd you guys have dinner
this
at?
is the thing, Steve. This is the thing. Nobody ever wants to take responsibility for their actions anymore. That's the society we live in. All right? And you got this rich asshole who's run this team into the ground for 20 years. The only reason he's changing the name is not just because of the pressure. It's because when it comes down to it, they weren't going to get the free stadium that they wanted on the place they wanted. That's why he's changing this. This is why now he pays attention to this, because he only understands money. He doesn't understand football. This is a team that's been run into the ground. It was one of the best organizations in professional football from 1969 up until Daniel Snyder got there.
Okay.
And now they're a laughingstock.
Okay. I don't agree with you.
You don't agree with which part?
That they were that great of an organization. They won a couple Super Bowls with a great coach.
Whoa. Come on now. With a great coach. So this is the thing. When you say they only had one great coach since 1969, it says a lot.
Because George Allen, they had
hey, this is a team.
Shanahan's a great coach. I mean, they had a multitude of great coaches. Yeah, they were a great organization for a period of time. But what team doesn't fall under? When's the last time the Cowboys did squat? And they've got allegedly the greatest owner in the history of the NFL.
The Cowboys have a miserable human being as an owner, just like the Redskins do, and he fails. He's a narcissist who wanted all the credit when they won Super Bowls. He got rid of the man that won them the Super Bowls, and now they've done nothing for over 20 years. See, this is the problem.
If you own the Redskins today, what's the first thing you would do?
I would fire anybody.
Go punch the guy out and hit on your wife?
I can tell you this. If anybody hits on my wife in front of me, they're going to get their ass kicked. Well, you could go, but that's disrespectful to me. And mainly it's disrespectful to her. And we live in a society where men as a group are disrespectful to women all the time. If you walk up to a woman, you can go to, you go to the casino. You watch a woman playing craps or playing whatever game, slamming. Dude walks up. You married? Invariably, she say, yeah. And then he'll say, are you happily married? I mean, guys are basically scumbags. 80% of the male population anymore is like that. And the problem is 80% of the female population has been taught that that's the way you're supposed to let a man act. I mean, I think what the society sees now is a lack of respect for each other, but even more than that, a lack of respect for yourself. I mean, come on, there's guys now that would walk up to a woman they don't even know and say, hey, you want to go have sex? I can tell you this. I would never consider walking up and asking anybody that. Number one, because I'm married, but before that, I would never do it because you have no respect for the person you're talking to. And you can sit there and laugh, but the fact that Daniel Snyder allowed this to happen showed that Daniel Snyder has no respect for anybody beneath him.
No, I'm just laughing only because I'm getting ready to have some fun with you. But did you ever watch Game of Thrones?
No.
Oh, well, you got to go watch it and see how they treated women in those days. That's a lifelong thing. Doesn't make it right. And let's get back to football. Let's get back to Dan Snyder and football. Oh, man, this is not a debate. This is not a debate on whether women are being treated right or not. This is a debate or discussion on whether Dan Snyder is qualified to own and run. I don't even think he runs the team. They generally
he runs the team. That's why they don't win.
Operations managers and general managers that run the team.
Hey, wait a second, Sam. Who's the general manager for the Redskins?
Yes, I couldn't tell you, and I have no friends who are I have friends who are Washington Redskins fans, and they'll tell you right away. It's a Snyder yes man in most positions, and even with Jay Gruden as the head coach, they'll tell you Jay Gruden to some extent really didn't have full control of that organization, that team, as far as some personnel decisions made. Dan Snyder made a lot of decisions for him. There's someone excited for Ron Rivera being there because they believe Ron Rivera will actually make some of the decisions and take some of those away from Dan Snyder. So I think Snyder's had more control maybe than he's let on the past couple of years.
What does Dan Snyder do for income? Just own the Redskins? Is that it? Know. Is he a Jimmy Irsay?
No, nobody does that. You got to have billions of dollars though in an NFL team.
Okay, well,
Sam, tell the man what he does.
What does Dan Snyder do? What occupation?
He's looks like he's an investor in real estate. It says film producer. I don't really know what that means. Entrepreneur as well. So I guess buying businesses and flipping them, I think, from the looks of it.
Okay. All right. No, I have no comment on it. I just wanted to know what if, like Jim Irsay, his sole source of income is the ownership of the Colts. He does not own another business.
Yeah, but that came from his dad, though.
Right. Well, his dad owned a construction business. Yeah, his dad owned a construction business. Jim ran that into the ground. So
yeah, Jim had it given.
Back to the original point. I think that and Sam, correct me if I'm wrong or not. Sam.
Yep.
Sam, Mike. Does winning cure everything? If the Redskins come out this year and start winning and put a team in contention for the NFC East, Mike, I know you're biting your bit at your mouth.
Let me ask, do you want my answer, or do you want the cynical answer that I'm going to give?
No, I want you to speak the truth.
All right, so for myself, I think winning shouldn't cover up everything that's going on underneath or everything that's happened beforehand. But if they were to come out and win a Super Bowl, I'm telling you, the public in general would probably absolutely forgive and just overlook everything. But that's how it always is with sports and stuff like that. But at the same point, like I said, that shouldn't be how it works. I mean, you should look at this and continue to address the situation moving forward. This should be probably even a bigger storyline than the name or whatever name they come up with the next week or something like that, because this should be an issue that has to be addressed over the course of months, not just days in the media. And like you said, I think you can. There was a time where you probably could have addressed this behind closed doors, but like I said, that probably should have been 2 years ago. If this was going to be dealt with internally, it should have been dealt with when you initially found out about this. Now that it's been festering for 2 years, you kind of lose that right to deal with it internally in some extent. You are now responsible approved to the NFL, which is going to report your actions probably to the general public and to the news media, what you're doing internally to actually overcome the mistakes that you have either overlooked or just were not looking into enough.
Okay, Sam, let me ask you this. Do we have proof and verification that this wasn't being dealt with 2 years ago internally? Do we know that for a fact? Or are we just assuming that Dan just said, what the hell? I'm not going to worry about this.
I have not read the Washington Post article because it was behind a paywall, but everything I've heard about, I have not seen any confirmation about that.
Right.
I haven't heard either way.
So we don't know for a fact one way or another whether he had been trying to clean it up internally. Most likely not.
Wait, you said he wasn't. If he was trying to turn it up internally, why is he now coming out and saying he's going to try to change the culture and change it internally? He should have done that 2 years ago.
I agree. It was a thing called a paradigm shift. And then you talk about changing cultures. There's a paradigm shift where you'd better be looking at the cultures of everybody around you and competing against you, and you better be staying 2 steps ahead of them, and it's called a paradigm shift. I'm going to change my culture before anybody else does. And
this is the thing. You should never have to change your culture. Once you take over a program, that's your culture.
No, it's not. I disagree.
Okay, it's not. I mean, you're right. I mean, hell, you know a lot more about that than I would. I've never really coached anything or done anything where I had to develop a culture. You were just at Pfizer, which is basically you know what Pfizer is.
No, it's a great company. It's going to save your life.
Yeah, it's a great country. It'll save everybody. It'll save us all with vaccines and everything else that destroy our kids and everything else. Be good.
Okay. All right. I just don't think it's a terminable offense, Mike. I think it's probably how 95% of the NFL teams are run. It is probably what.
Really?
I would probably say more so than not. Sam, jump in here.
You know what, Steve? I would agree with you completely. That's why I don't like it. I don't know why stuff like this is allowed to happen. And you're right. You know, if Washington would have won a Super Bowl last year, you wouldn't hear anybody say anything about this.
And the Redskins would still be the Redskins.
And the problem, no, I think that would have been changed either way. Not that it should or it shouldn't. We're not going to address that right now. But I think if they'd have won a Super Bowl last year, I still think there was enough. There's been people for 30 years wanting to change this name. And the things that happened outside of the NFL, outside of Daniel Snyder's control, are what led to people stepping up on this. But the thing is this. We've got a Redskin announcer basically admitting to, he quit his job too 2 years later because he groped a young intern, a college girl. I mean, that is sick. And the fact that that happened in 2018, Snyder knew and the NFL knew. When I read the report, I think it was on Yahoo Sports, they said that Snyder knew about it. The NFL was informed about it. And just like the NFL did with Ray Rice when he was beating up his wife, until there was video, they didn't do a damn thing. And my whole thing here is this. The NFL has no problems with objectifying women. And what they don't realize is this. Cheerleaders, half-naked women, have nothing to do with why most men are going to watch football. You may see a girl or a cheerleader during the game and think, oh, she looks good. And then it goes back to the game and you're watching the game. You're not thinking about the cheerleader. So, I mean, the thing is this. And this is just, once again, it's a bunch of rich billionaires that own football teams that are allowed to do whatever the hell they want because they're rich billionaires. Daniel Snyder's being attacked right now because of the Redskins' name. And that's it. It drew attention to him. And then I imagine somebody from the Washington Post dug this up. A few of those women figure, hell, let's go ahead and bring it up now. Maybe somebody will listen to me now because they wouldn't listen to me 2 years ago. So I think there is a huge issue here that, yeah, I think you're right. That's probably how most of these teams are run. But I can also tell you this, the teams that stick out to me most that are run poorly are the Cowboys and Redskins, and neither one of them have sniffed the Super Bowl since 1996.
Yeah,
and I don't think that's any coincidence.
Sam, what is? Do we have any knowledge of when the? How do I phrase this correctly without getting us? When the newest event occurred? Because most of the ones I've heard are 10, 15 years old.
I
mean, you understand what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it happened 15 years ago or it happened 15 minutes ago. It's dead ass wrong. Mike, I agree with you there 100%. I'm just saying, when was the last event that occurred?
Yeah, from what I'm reading, and this is just an ESPN report that's giving a synopsis of the story, because as I said, it's behind a paywall. I don't have the official report. But it's listing the events occurring from beginning of 2006 and occurring all the way up to this past year in 2019.
Okay. So it's an ongoing cultural problem.
Yeah. I think if more NFL teams...
My point is, he knew that was there.
Pardon? Mike?
He knew that culture was there. He knew that culture was there. I mean, it happened for 13 or 14 years.
So, Mike, let me ask you this. Is this a question because you've been harping on the fact that the NFL gets in cahoots with all these teams to cover it in order for the profit motive, which I would tend to agree with you, that it's all about the money. And it's going to be more about the money now because they ain't going to be putting people in the stands to any great numbers. So money is going to become even more important. Now, I think the NFL will stay viable. I don't think they're in any jeopardy of going bankrupt. But is this a problem more with the NFL? And again, and Snyder's just the scapegoat right now because of the Redskins name change, and he fought that. And then we got women who come out and make, and I'm not going to delegitimize their claims. I'm not going to do that because I don't know what occurred. Most likely there probably is truth to what they were saying in some fashion.
Well, Daniel Snyder wouldn't come out with the comment he did saying he wanted to change the culture if it wasn't true, probably.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way. And the Washington Redskin announcer of the last decade or so wouldn't have stepped down.
Yeah, that's an easy answer. You know that as a football coach, if you go into your people and they start ripping you and riding you, it's like, oh, I'm changing the culture. We did it at Pfizer. We did it at, the only place it never happened was Indiana, where Knight just looked at him and said, you know what you can do with your cultural change? Put it in.
Yeah, the thing is this. Bobby Knight had established a culture from the day one that he got there.
Uh-huh.
If you have to change your culture, you failed. So if I start a football program and I'm starting a team, all right, I'm doing it right now. First year as a head coach of a high school. I mean, I come out and I tell them what's expected. I'd never deviate from that, ever, under any circumstances. There's too many people that will say, they'll talk all this crap about, I want this culture. This is the culture I want. But then they'll let people do stuff that's a little bit different from that culture. And before you know it, you're way far away from that culture, Steve. And when you've got to change culture back, it's really hard to do. It can be done, but after 20 years with Daniel Snyder, that's a long time of doing things wrong to all of a sudden say, hey, I'm going to start doing things right. It's like your son. He hadn't cleaned his room since the 3rd grade. And all of a sudden in 9th grade, he comes home someday and says, Dad, I'm going to start cleaning my room. And he goes in and he cleans his room. A week later, you go in there, your wife's cleaning the room. Because, I mean, what has been always accepted or what you allow is what you get. With culture, Bobby Knight, he never allowed anybody to deviate from his culture pretty much, correct?
Correct.
Everybody knew what he wanted. You knew what was going to happen if you deviated, and that's just the way it was. There's too many people now that are leaders, whether they're coaches, businessmen, or whatever, that will allow somebody to like to bend the culture just a little bit. Once you allow the culture to be bent a little bit, that culture is screwed. When you have a culture, you have to stick with it, stay with it no matter what. And there's not a lot of people that are willing to do that. You know, Bill Belichick's a guy. I guarantee you his culture has never changed. You know, Vince Lombardi was a guy. When you look at the people that played for him, I've had the opportunity to interview a few of them. It never changed. You knew what was expected. If you didn't do it, it didn't matter who you were, you would be gone.
Yeah. Okay. And again, I want to no, it's a fun discussion, but I feel like Sam's looking at us like, what the hell am I doing here? One question for you, Mike. You've got kids who are of driving age, and they go out and get in trouble at any level. Do you change your culture immediately in your home? Or do you just slap them on the wrist and say, you can't get involved, you can't do that?
I can tell you this, Steve. My kids are 18 and 20 years old.
Mm-hmm.
None of them have an arrest record. None of them have been arrested. They do not go out on Friday or Saturday nights. The culture is in place that, you know, if you're going to do something, you're going to do it at home, and you're not going to do anything illegal. And that's the way it is. Because if you do that and you're 20 years old, you're not going to live in my home anymore.
But you didn't answer my question.
Yeah, I did. I just answered it. I don't know because that has not happened.
Okay.
And I'm not. Right. I mean, it's not allowed. You won't be here once you're past 18. You can ask my daughter. My daughter at 18 violated the culture of the house I wanted to be in, and she no longer lived there.
There you go. You changed the culture.
No, I didn't. I removed somebody.
Well, yes, you did. Yeah, you're right. You held ground on your culture. Sam, what's the answer here? I mean, you started off by saying Snyder's probably not going to get fired. Now, do you still feel he should be forced to give up his foot? I mean, giving up a football team is a pretty big deal.
Oh yeah, I know. I'm not
saying like saying we're going to say you can't practice in preseason for 2 weeks. This is something that's worth billions of dollars, and the Redskins are probably one of the more valued teams and they're getting ready to move back to DC. And is it worthy of stripping him of his team? I mean, the guy that owned the Clippers, yes.
Yeah.
The guy was an idiot. Cuban, no. I went to college with Mark. I know Mark. And he just was a goofball. Smart man. Snyder, is he more toward Mike? What was the guy's name that owned the Clippers?
Sterling.
Yeah.
Sterling, yeah.
Sterling.
Is he more like Sterling or more like Cuban?
Well, here's my thing with Dan Snyder. He's not in the same boat as someone like Jerry Richardson with the Panthers, who was most recent NFL owner to kind of be forced out because Jerry Richardson had accusations leveled directly against him that were both in cases of like sexual harassment and also racism in the organization. So he had issues where he directly was responsible and had to go. The thing that could save Dan Snyder is the fact that he's not directly alleged to have done anything, even though he's negligent to everything that occurred, which he absolutely is negligent. But I don't personally, I would have no problem with him going, with him being cut out of the league. And personally, I'd be absolutely okay with it. And like I said, because here's what I'm looking at. If I knew one of the individuals who was directly affected by this, if I knew one of the women, they were my girlfriend or a family member, I would say you have to have him gone immediately. And that's the way I would look at it from my perspective, is that if you are the person who knows someone who's affected by this, I don't think you can have any kind of acceptance or any kind of forgiveness for Dan Snyder as long as he's the owner of the Washington Redskins. So that's my personal take on it. I don't think they'll force him out just because I don't think he's on the same level as a Jerry Richardson. But at the same point, like I said, if this was a family member or a loved one of mine, I would absolutely say, like, look, you can't have any tolerance for this. So that's the road I'm going to take. I'm going to say, if he's out, he's out, and I'm not going to have any second thoughts about it.
All right, Mike. What about a solution that says the NFL comes into the Redskins and says, we're not going to strip you of your team, but we're going to strip you of your day-to-day operations and run a team. And we're going to bring somebody in to run your organization for a suspension period, 1, 2, 3, 4 years, whatever they come to agreement on. And we'd have to know the brevity of what was going on inside the walls of the Redskins office. Would that be fair? Or, Mike, do you think Snyder needs to just be booted out of the NFL?
I think he needs to be booted out, and I think probably half the owners in the NFL probably should be booted out for the things that have been done in the NFL. I mean, from Colin Kaepernick, who I don't particularly like, but I think the way he was treated was poor. I think you can look at the way the retired players with the CTE are treated. I mean, this is a league that is basically a big corporation just trying to make as much money as they can. They don't care about the fans. They don't care about the players. How about this? This is the one league that has had time to prepare a COVID-19 plan. And they've done nothing, Sam. And I mean, when you look at it, they don't have a plan for what happens if players on a team test positive. I mean, they don't have anything here. They've done nothing to prepare for this, and they're supposed to go to camp with the rookies reporting in 2 days. So this is a league that drops the ball.
Yeah, there was a coordinated media blitz today by NFL players regarding that issue. They actually put out tweets all across social media. There were at least 90 tweets, I believe, from NFL players saying, look, we need answers. We need some kind of plan in place. We want clear communication here between the NFL and the NFLPA regarding what we're going to do with COVID-19, because there has been no plan. There has been no communication. We need to know what's going on. And we want to play football, but we need to know how we're going to do our jobs. And it's very simple because, let me put it this way. Every major corporation, every major business, every major college has set up a plan for what they're going to do with COVID-19 if someone is to return to the organization or the campus, if someone tests positive. They most of them have set in place plans of what they're supposed to do. And like I know personally with Clemson, they've communicated with me every step of the way what they're expecting of us and what the alternative routes are for every single situation that happens. If the NFL has not put in place one single instance of this, it's a total, utter failure. Because now, regardless of however you feel about COVID-19, the issue is that you are supposed to be the great league and you've had all this time to put in place a plan and you've done absolutely nothing. There's been no communication. There's been no preparation. I mean, I can't believe what I was hearing today. I thought for sure they had something at least in place behind closed doors. And it appears that they've just been ignoring it. They've had nothing. So it's a total failure on the part of the NFL.
Sam, do we have any numbers on the positivity rate of COVID-19 in the NFL right now of people being tested, players?
There was one, but
is there any numbers out there? I don't know.
There was one that came out the other day. I don't have it on hand right now, but it was not extremely high. But I do know a handful of players that tested for it.
Yeah. NASCAR puts 25,000 people in the seats at Bristol. So far, no word of any outbreak of COVID-19.
How did they trick that many people into showing up to a NASCAR race, Steve? Did they give them free tickets or did they pay them?
No, they paid out the yin-yang for them. There was a line of people that got turned away.
Well, I don't see anything wrong with that. I don't really care. I mean, this is the thing. Once again, the death rate is extremely low. And if you test everybody, if you test 50 people, 3 are coming back false positive because the rate that the test is successful is somewhere between 35 and 42%. So it comes to a point where you either play or you don't. But I don't know. This brings us to the other topic. If either one of you guys, I'm sure Steve has because he's got a Dodgers jersey on. Have you watched a baseball game in the last 24 hours with the fake crowd noise and nobody in the stands? But in New York with the Mets, they've got blowed up pictures of people's heads that are giving them money.
Buy those. You pay for those.
Yeah, I know. Which me and Steve or Sam were talking about before the show started. Easiest money the Mets have ever made. But Sam, what was because when I watched this, it reminds me of
Sam and I fished in and bought one for you when you had hair on your head.
Mike got there.
We both fished in and bought one for you.
Steve,
you're in center field.
Steve, the thing is this. You don't even have hair. That looks like somebody took some plastic and stuck it into your head and then, you brushed it back trying to look like Pat Riley. But when you look at these games,
I am Pat Riley.
It reminded me of those old sitcoms in the 70s or the 80s where you had the canned applause or canned laughter. I mean, to me, it was almost hideous to watch the Yankees and the Mets last night, Steve.
Okay, I agree. So, but that becomes a personal choice. We moved on now from Dan Snyder. So, we all agree he's not going to lose his team.
I think it's possible he could because I think it's also possible.
I say no, he's not going to get kicked out of the
organization. There may be
Sam,
more than what you think.
Let's end it, Sam. Yes or no?
If you made me
yes or no?
I would say he probably does. I probably doesn't. If you made me put money
Mike, yes or no?
Jeez.
Yes or no, Mike?
Yes or no, Mike? I said he should be.
Okay, but is he going to be?
I don't care. Because it's the NFL. They're not going to do the right thing, so I'm sure.
So your answer is no, he's not going to be kicked out of the league.
Now, are you going to answer the question?
On to the noise thing. I don't tend to watch a lot of baseball.
Why do you pay like $200 for a Dodgers jersey?
This was given to me by Verlander. He and I were down in Malibu yesterday.
Yeah.
We were.
It was this Bobby Verlander, the homeless guy down there at Malibu, or how did he get Verlander jersey?
I went and got me. This was like a $30 jersey. It didn't have a name or a number on it or anything.
Oh, okay. I didn't know it didn't have a name or a number. All right.
Nothing. Just a T-shirt.
David Wilkes jersey.
Wait a minute. I got to unbutton this button. So,
don't unbutton the button. Don't unbutton the button.
There you go. Now we got it going. I watched a lot of golf. I watched the golf today at Muirfield Village. I'm going to tell you, sports without fans is painful at best. The fan. I never realized how important part fans are to a sporting event until you don't have them. We're so used to them always being there. Sam, you agree with me? I mean, NASCAR races. Now, today they ran in Texas and they had no fans there. At Bristol the other night for the All-Star race, they put 25,000, I think. They sold 25,000 tickets, which that stadium holds maybe 90,000, something around that. It's built like a football stadium. It's only a quarter mile or a half mile track. So they play football games in the infield actually during the off season. But I think sports without fans. I watched a little bit of tennis the other day. Looks like they were playing in somebody's backyard.
Yeah, it's bizarre, right? Because it feels like you're almost practicing to some degree. And I think that might be an issue for some of the guys on the field. I don't think it should be necessarily, but I think some people, it's probably throwing them off a little bit because it's hard sometimes. The practice mentality isn't always the same as a game mentality. So maybe it throws you off a little bit. I'm sure you'll get adjusted to it within the first couple of games and you'll be ready to go from there on out. That's just how you are with professional athletes. But at the same time, it was weird. And I agree with Mike. The piped in artificial crowd noise was just so, it was so utterly fake. I mean, there's maybe one or two instances where it was actually timed right. And it was like the right reaction. But half the time, I guess they have like 90 pre-recorded different fan noises or something like that they play throughout the stadium. Half the time, it's just the wrong noise in general. The fans wouldn't even act like that.
Do you think they got a can where 50,000 people are chanting bullshit on a bad call?
They want our monetization for this show. Thank you.
All right. Do we want to show a comment? I didn't read it yet, so hopefully he doesn't, write the way Sam makes his comments. All right. This is from Steve Gullins. If you're playing in a bubble or some whatever play, I mean, what the hell kind of BS is this? If you are a balker, you play without fans. What difference does it make? Steve? I think Steve here.
I think he means baller.
He has as many problems with the spell check and the big fingers as Steve does. So it's got something to do with the name of Steve. The NFL is not going to do it.
Thank you for sending a comment in. I'm going to be positive here.
Yeah, I agree with him. As long as the name of the Redskins has changed, I don't think that we're going to see anything basically done. And I want to thank Steve for the comment. But I believe this is all BS. I mean, either play or don't. This reminds me, Steve, when we were younger, like in the late 70s, early 80s. Remember when the Cleveland Indians used to play at Municipal Stadium? It would seat 90,000. There'd be like 500 people there. That's what last night's Yankees-Mets game reminded me of. And I'm sorry, I want to watch live sports just like everybody else does. But to me, it looks like practices. My question to Steve is, Steve, you sat on the bench at a very high level of sports, and you watch guys that really good play, and sometimes you got into games. Now, if you're playing, I'm just
just settle little jabs in there.
Right, this is
I average 16 minutes a game playing. That's almost half the game.
That was because you guys 37 games. They let you play the whole damn game. But the point is this: when you're in the game, all right, whether you're at IU or you're playing at Michigan State, do you even realize the crowd's there once you start playing?
Well, yes, you do, but no, you don't. And now I'd say two things to that. One is they interviewed Tiger about not playing in front of no fans. And Tiger actually said the players love it because they can move more freely on the golf course. Like he brought up the example of usually to get from the 15th green to the 16th tee box, we have to circumvent, this way, this way, this way, this way, because of where the fans, they can sell tickets in certain areas and they rope them off. Now there's just a direct line from the 15th green to the 16th tee box. So he said, as players, we like that. As a player, and Mike, you played at a high level too, and you coached at a high level. The atmosphere really affects you during warm-up and ready to go. Once the game starts, if you're focused on what your goals are, the fans are there, but they don't affect you in any way, shape, or form. I don't ever recall getting more juiced by the fans being there. It may have made me want to do a fist pump or something to appease them, but I don't think it ever changed the way I played the game based on how we needed to play the game to win the game. Sam or Mike, what do you think, Mike? Well, Mike, you asked the question.
I agree because, that's why I asked the question, because I know this. if I'm coaching a football game in an arena and there's 10,000 people in there screaming, I notice it until the ball's kicked off. During the game, I don't notice anything going on around me. Except for in Saginaw one time, some dude threw a beer and a hot dog at my head. I knew he was there. But overall, you don't realize once you start playing that there's people in the stands. So I don't know if that's different with baseball because, I mean, I played baseball, but let's face it, I mean, Little League Babe Ruth, that was about it for me because I thought it was a stupid, boring sport. But I like to watch it back then, but overall, unless you're pitching, it can get pretty boring. So I know this. I never noticed the crowd, no matter how big the game was. The only time you notice it, like you said, is pregame, maybe halftime going in, halftime coming out, and at the end of the game, whether, if you're at IU and you won, they're telling you how great you are. If you're walking off and you lost, the coach is kicking you and everybody's screaming and calling you names.
Yeah, but Sam, let me put it to you this way, and this is kind of another thing that Tiger said, and I agree with him because I've played in some pro-ams before where there have been people on the course when I'm playing. A fan, not cheering me on, obviously, but there are big-time celebrities there, and as a former player, you recorded some of that, but you got to play, of course. He said that fans, even in football stadiums, frame the courses or frame the facilities. And he used a couple of examples. He said, when there are fans on the golf course, they frame the shot for you because it's lined up and they basically give you different angles when the course is wide open. Okay. And I thought that was an interesting concept in theory and then I looked at the picture of, Ben Hogan shooting the one iron at Marion, and you from the back of him. You all have seen the shot in a picture. You just probably don't remember what it is, but you've seen it, Mike. I guarantee you.
It's golf. You don't watch sports, Steve.
Okay, but it just frames the shot, and then he talked about how football stadiums get smaller. I mean, the perception is, when there's people standing behind the end zone, around the end zone, that 10 yards that's there all of a sudden gets a little tighter, a little smaller. And he said a lot of people will change their dynamics in that. What's your thoughts on that? Do you have any?
I mean,
agree?
No, I think with the fans in football, it's going to be a little bit more interesting with golf because with golf, like you say, they're kind of right there, but for football, obviously you have them sectioned off and put a little bit further away from the players. For me personally, I think in the moment it doesn't change anything because you're so focused on catching the pass or breaking that pass up or making something like that. You want to make the play so bad that you don't focus on the fans. I agree with you in that sense, but at some point, it's probably going to hit you. Like when you're on the sideline, maybe, and when you're not necessarily on the field making that play. Maybe it will hit you like you feel like that silence kind of creep into you a little bit. Maybe you start looking around and realizing it's a little bit more empty. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes with a sport like football. But I think with baseball, it's a little bit different. With baseball, it's even more noticeable, especially from a viewing perspective, because it's quiet a lot of times. There's not guys running into each other, hitting each other, stuff like that. It's really, I mean, guys throwing a ball around, sometimes you get hit and you can hear that sound, but you really don't have that much noise. So for a sport like baseball, I think it's a little bit more noticeable than something like football.
Yeah, Mike, I had a question for you, Mike. In the NFL, two-part question. One, is the bubble working? And the second part is, are they going to be playing games on those practice courts that are lined up? Or do they have one stadium that will be the game, and then you just will rotate in, kind of like an AAU tournament? You've got one main stadium where the big teams go play. So
I think this real quick. I'm going to cut you off, but I'm just going to do it because this goes back to what me and Sam talked about earlier. The NFL has no plan yet. I mean, the way it sounds,
they're going to play NBA. Yeah.
Yes, the NBA plays in the bubble, but the NFL, I don't think they're going to play in their own stadiums. The NBA is going to be in a bubble, and I mean, when we talk about the crowd. If you're playing a sport and you're an athlete, you don't even notice the crowd is there. If you do, you probably stopped playing about junior high or high school. because you're not going any farther if you get wrapped up in a big crowd in a game. I just think this. I think as a spectator, as a fan, it takes a lot away from the game because it does seem like a practice then. But I can tell you this. I've coached football games, arena football-wise, where, there were 10,000 people in a 10,000-seat stadium or there was 1,000 people in a 10,000-seat stadium. And to me, it didn't make a difference because I'm just trying to win that game. It makes a difference beforehand. You're thinking, oh, hell, there's only 1,000 people here. I hope the owner pays us. But other than that, you don't really worry about it.
And Steve, I do have some clarification on the NBA thing. I think those are just the practice courts. I know the Scott you're talking about, the courts lined up next to each other. I believe those are just the practice courts. I believe they will use a separate area for the games. And a little clarification, something earlier was 72 NFL players have tested positive for COVID-19 as of the most recent results, which were July 17th, so very recently, last couple of days.
Out of how many? Out of how many?
Let me see if it gives me a number. It just says 72 active players have tested positive. I would assume that's out of close to 1,000 players, or I would assume it's over in the hundreds at least. So it's not.
Mike, are they going to survive? Is the NFL, NBA, MLB, hockey, are they going to survive? Are they going to get to the season without having to shut down because of COVID?
Probably not.
I agree with you.
I don't know why baseball and basketball and hockey are even trying to play their seasons. I mean, you're 3 or 4 months after the last game was played. This is not a legitimate champion in any of them. Now, the NFL, I could see how they could possibly pull it off. But let's face it, the NFL's got so much money, the NFL is going to do what the NFL wants to do. That's why guys like Jerry Jones and, Daniel Snyder and all the other scumbags that are running NFL teams, and there are a lot of them. Jerry Richardson showed that. I mean, if you remember, Sam, a few years back, Jerry Richardson was considered one of the best owners in the NFL.
Remember they had that what was it? It's a statue of him with like the Panthers and stuff in front of the stadium. Do you remember seeing that? I think they took that down recently.
Well, every statue was taken down recently, but except for that Pete Rose statue in Cincinnati, which needs to be taken down.
Yeah, I think
there's $8 Pete Rose. Take them down.
But with
I'm not starting that one up. That's another hour of the show, and we'll be way over time.
It's an hour that you'll lose, and you know it. So go ahead, Sam.
With the NFL, there is some concern though about playing out the regular season because depending on how much you lose this year, could impact the salary cap situation in the future. Because as of right now, they sent a proposal a couple of days ago to the NFLPA offering to cut something like $40 million in NFL or player salaries and benefits per team. So let's say 20 million of that is in player benefits, which doesn't count for the cap, and 20 million of it is in salary cap. We're talking about a $20 million salary cap reduction. There are teams that are like $50,000 over the projected salary cap for next year already. So
does that mean people have to play with just Patrick Mahomes?
pretty much, right? I mean, seriously, honestly, I'm being serious. Like, this is a situation where you've got guys who have signed record deals, and Patrick Mahomes, Myles Garrett just signed one, Laramie Tunsil has signed one. So there are guys who are signing record deals, and if you take the salary cap and you move it back 3 or 4 years in the past, there will be teams that just cannot actually financially play because they'll be over the cap regardless of what they do. There are teams that just can't generate that kind of cap. They can't overcome the kind of cap deficit. So the issue with the NFL playing right now is not so much that the owners can't afford to take the hit, it's that they're going to spread the hit with the players by affecting the salary cap in the future, and therefore impact the players. So the players are going to want to play because regardless of what happens here, the owners are going to make sure the players lose money as well.
Yeah. Steve?
I concur. I mean, I can't add anything to that. No.
Well, you did add concur.
Okay. No, I agree.
I appreciate you.
I think the mistake was for the NBA, NFL, MLB, I think the mistake to even fire up and try and play. I think it's just the Titanic waiting to sink. Beautiful boat.
I think with the NFL, it's the Titanic waiting to sink because they have no plan.
Yeah.
Having no plan is planning to fail.
Yeah, and they've already busted out of the bubble. NFL players have already got caught cheating the bubble. It's early. It's 1-2 weeks into it. Wait till week 7 or 8. You know, LeBron's like, the hell with this. I'm going to go ride the e-ticket ride at Star Wars Land.
There's a Star Wars Land?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
You can drive the Millennium Falcon.
What's that?
That's Han Solo and Chewbacca's ship.
All right, I got a serious question. Sam, do you watch Star Wars?
I watched the original movies when I was growing up. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody
But
watches
you know,
Star
one of
Wars.
these idiots that would go to Star Wars Land, right?
It made the one run in like 12 parsnips, which is still the record.
I see. I get that reference.
I don't know. I'd have to get my son in here. He
Why?
knows all that stuff. Because
Well,
Star Wars.
why would you want to know all that stuff? It's Star Wars.
Well, mostly because he works on one of the shows.
So, I don't care if he's Princess Leia or whatever the hell it is.
Princess Leia.
It's
Well, let's
still a-
move on.
That's the only one I know. Chewbacca. There you go. But actually, the first Star Wars, the night it came out, I went with my dad to see it because my sister wanted to see Saturday Night Fever, and it was rated R, and I was only like 8 or 9 years old. So me and my dad went in and sat and watched Star Wars, and about 20 minutes in, he looked at me and he said, "Son, this shit is stupid." I said, "You're right, Dad." So we just went out and waited in the car.
We're losing people
ahead,
right now.
No, we're not. We didn't have any. Go ahead, Steve.
Wow. No, I've got nothing else to say. Good show, guys. I think Dan
That's the
Snyder,
first time that's ever happened.
I think Dan Snyder's going to be fine. That's what the purpose of the show was.
I don't know. Sam,
And I think
you want to tell everybody where to
I
follow you on
And I
Twitter?
think the Pete Rose statue should stay.
Yeah, I mean, he loved 14-year-old girls. That's fine. He thought they were 16. Go ahead, Sam. Tell everybody where to find you on Twitter.
Before you open this new can of worms, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook at Sam_Teets33. I appreciate you. Go and check out all the stats, articles, and polls I post regularly, so feel free to go check this out.
All right. You can't find Steve Risley anywhere but in his house, hidden from COVID because he's older.
I don't want to be found. srisley34 at AOL.com. Instagram, I don't know. srisley34. Punch up srisley34 and you're going to find me all over the social map.
Would you like to give your address out too, Steve?
That is my address.
Oh, I just meant your address in case somebody wanted to come over or something.
Oh, my home
You'd have a
address.
party at Risley? Yeah, because aren't you having a COVID party next Saturday night in LA?
No, I'm not. Let's end the show. You're just picking on me.
I
now.
thought it was already over. All right. Yeah, I am. But see, I get to pick on Sam all week. All right, guys. You can follow me at Grueling Truth. You can hear all of our shows live on Facebook or YouTube. You can hear our podcasts on iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify. Wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find the Grueling Truth. So for now, for Sam Teets, Steve Risley, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to the Grueling Truth, where the legends speak. All right, man.